And this meeting is being recorded. Great. And welcome everyone once again to this session, Mastering Multiple Choice Questions. We did expand it to incorporate short answer questions as well as true or false questions, and to a certain extent essay questions, right? Whether it's short essays, long essays. We do have in the chat some persons who indicated with a thumbs up that they have encountered those kinds of questions in their assessments, or may encounter these questions in the end of term exam examinations. So, and that's perfectly fine. But this session is for you. All right. We really want to help you or equip you with the skills and the tips and the I don't want to say tricks, but the tips. All right. In managing and navigating through this examination season. And I would venture to say excelling, not just, bare passing. Some of us may feel like we just want to pass the course. All right. Yeah. But let's try to aim to excel and do really well. And if not, you aim for the sky, but you land on the clouds. And if you miss the clouds, you land on the trees. At least you're getting somewhere. All right. So facilitator for today's session, Dr. Justin Zephyrin. And we can get straight into it. Now, if you know anything and about these workshops, I like to start with an icebreaker. And so for this icebreaker, you would see Mr. Duku posted some links in the chat. So you can start with question 1 and then work your way down to question 2 and 3. All right. And don't worry, you could put a pseudonym if you'd like, but it's just to kind of get things started. So the first question, identify one thing you normally do before or in preparation for multiple choice or end of term exam. So you just click on the link, you would see it'll take you to a particular page, and then you can insert your response there. So let's see for question 1, what do we have? Identify one thing you do before or in preparation for multiple choice exam. So I'll give you a couple seconds to respond to that. All right. Is the link working for everyone? All right, so you read lectures, nice. Practice multiple choice questions online, okay. You try to become familiar with the most important topics. That's a good tip right there, and I do have that as well. You pray, good. That's very good, it helps you, relax and clear your mind a bit. You study lecture notes, you review all lecture slides, okay. That's if you get lecture slides too. You time yourself. Very good. Review lecture notes. Read main points of notes. Nice. So by chance, and you could post it in the chat if you want, or you could use your mic. Do you make notes in lectures? Do you make your own notes, or do you depend on the lecture's notes or slides? So while you might post that in the chat, I see some other responses. Prepare yourself. So how do you prepare? Some person said you read the main points of notes, review lecture notes, you time yourself. Nice. Okay, so anybody, you could use your mics if you'd like. Do you make notes? Do you make your own notes in classes, and do you review those notes in preparation for your exams? Yeah. Someone posted there. I'm not too sure. Let's see what we have there. Mr. Mohammed. Lecture notes. LaShoy said lecture notes. Good. Most slides, you write, so mostly slide notes, and if time permits, you make necessary notes to answer learning objectives. Oh, that's very good that you use the learning objectives as a guide as well. I think Dr. Jones, who's here as well, will be very happy to see that. Nice. Next person stated, Anya, you said you make your own notes and you read your lecture notes as well. That's a good combination of the two. So some things you may miss in your lecture notes, you might see in the facilitator's lecture notes. So good, very good. All right, so the next link that Mr. Duku posted, what kinds of emotions do you experience during a multiple choice or a short answer or a true or false exam? Some person said anxiety or confusion, Dr. Jones. So we have our work cut out for us, yeah? Some person said, right, you feel nervous, right? Right, you feel confused sometimes. Wow, keep it coming, keep it coming. So personal anxiety or nervousness, confusion, right? So those are some of the keywords thus far. I notice anxiety is getting bigger and bigger. That's because many of you are feeling that way, have experienced those emotions or that emotion. All right. And remember, and somebody said stress. Okay, okay. Overwhelmed, wow, overwhelmed, nervousness, stress, anxiety. Someone said blocks, so you experience mental blocks, okay, or mind blocks. Keep it coming, keep it coming. Right, stress, you feel nervous, you experience nervousness, anxiety, okay, and stress. So, you know, this is why we have this session today and this session tomorrow. They go hand in hand. So you will see some things that we may cover in this session that we may cover or elaborate further in tomorrow's session. All right, and that's perfectly fine. All right, so thank you so much for that. So Dr. Jones, I don't know if you have anything to say before we move further. Maybe we're on the right track to trying to address these needs. Yeah, you can go right ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Zephyrin. Hi, everybody. I do agree with you, Dr. Zephyrin. These are real issues, real concerns, and it's really, really encouraging to see that students are willing to share about their feelings as well. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Jones. So we will definitely be doing some more preparation for tomorrow's session. So be sure and we'll share the link and so on with you in just a bit. All right. So thank you for these responses. They're very insightful and they definitely help us. All right. One more question. Do you feel satisfied or happy or excited after a multiple choice, a short answer, or a true or false, or any exam for that matter? Do you feel happy? Okay. 100% of you said no. Okay, so we have some people like 20%, they say, okay, keep it coming. We still have a landslide or a majority vote of 83% said no. Okay. And I might ask you to elaborate on those feelings later on in this session. So I just wanted to, nice, keep it coming. I think we still have persons voting. So we have almost 10% saying that they feel satisfied, happy, or excited. Okay, now it's jumped up to 22%. Right. And we have roughly 78 to 80% of you said, no, you do not feel satisfied. This is also almost like, you know, the people meter question. And anyway, that's another program altogether. All right, so I'll read it like the people meter thing. 22% of you said yes, 78% of you said no. All right, so so this session, in case you haven't guessed already, it's gonna be very I don't want to say informal, but we're gonna have be very comfortable, right? Be very open. You know, we want to address those concerns as best as possible, and it helps if you let us know those concerns like you just did in that poll activity. So we thank you so much for that for sharing those perspectives or experiences. This session, between this session and tomorrow's session, don't worry, we got you covered. All right, we're here to help you in conjunction with the Department of Student Support and Development, DSSD. So I really thank them as well for helping us, partnering with us in this regard. Now, we have some learning objectives or outcomes by the end of this particular session. All right, we're going to look at preparing for an MCU, SAQ, short answer, or a true or false quiz or exam through various techniques. So we'll try to implement those or practice those. We will also use strategies to minimize stress, let's call it that, in these kinds of exams. And of course, the session that we're going to do tomorrow would explore that in further detail. So this is just skimming the surface to kind of connect the two. All right. And then, of course, we're going to be able to identify tips in preparing for your exams and use strategies in identifying the correct answer, being able to eliminate well, navigate and find your way to the correct answer. All right, in your multiple choice exams or true or false exams, and even managing short answer questions as well. Now, managing exams, let's call it that for now. Managing exams comprises 3 phases or 3 stages, rightfully so, right? We have prior to the exam, which is stage 1, or before the exam. Then we have during the exam, and then we have after the exam. Now you could look at it. I know we just had lunch from some of us, or some of you, and well, some of us, I could say that, right? Think of it like a sandwich, all right? You have the top bun, which is the before, or maybe you might, well, depending on how you look at the sandwich or hamburger. Then you have the middle, which will be like the dressing, the meat, the, whatever, the filling. And then you have the other part of the sandwich to make it a whole, all right? So it helps if you have 3, we identified for this particular session, we followed that format. You have 3 phases or stages in preparing for your exams, whether it's a multiple choice, a short answer, a true or false, or a traditional essay question, whether it's online or face-to-face as well, all right? So we want to really help you in that regard. So we broke it down into those 3 stages. Now, the first stage, which is preparation, all right? Just, at the very least, you want to make sure that you are well prepared for your exam, whatever format it may take, online, face-to-face, multiple choice, short answer questions, essay questions. All right. And these are some tips that we are sharing with you to make sure that you are well prepared. Now, a lot of the exam, in excelling in an exam, a lot of it has to do with what you've done before. All right. A lot of it. And less so after the exam, because there's nothing you can do after the exam, right? So a lot of it is what you did before the exam and during the exam. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that. In terms of preparation tips, you want to create a study schedule, all right, and stick to it. Now, this study schedule must be practical or realistic. By a show of hands, do any of you have a study schedule or study timetable or a schedule that helps you put time aside for your different courses or exams? Right, LaShoyce, right. Right, okay, good. I'm seeing some other right hands up. Sharada, nice. Ricardo, good, good. So that's good. But have you ever created a study schedule and realized that it's not really working? Has that ever happened to anyone? That has happened to me quite a lot. Yes, Ricardo said yes, it has. Nice. Michelle, Michelle is saying, oh, hi, Michelle. So you're going to feature some comments here, right? Yes, it has. Michelle said all the time, yes. And Michelle is just welcoming. Let me acknowledge Jamaica in the house. All right. LaShoy said yes. So this is definitely true. It happens. Now, usually the first time you create a study schedule, it's not going to go according to plan. So you're going to have to make some tweaks here and there. But at least you have a plan that can guide you. And you can make some tweaks along the way, but it'll guide you. So you know exactly how much time you're gonna delegate to certain courses or certain exams and that sort of thing. So it gives you a guide. So that's one way it takes away a lot of the pressure and the stress in preparing for an exam. The next thing is start early. The best preparation is early preparation, all right? You want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to prepare, as opposed to little time to cram everything and then you go blank in the exam. I spoke to a couple students a couple of weeks ago as we were, sensitizing persons to this session. And many of the students said that, in preparing for an exam, you stay up late, you pull all-nighters. Sometimes you might pull all-nighters on campus or at home. you're drinking a lot of beverages that, energy beverages and so on. And, sometimes you fall asleep in the exam, or you kind of crash in the exam. All right. But, one way to take less pressure off of yourselves is to start early. Now, in some cases, some people may thrive under that pressure to prepare for exams, but you don't want to cut it too close. At least give yourself, a good bit of time beforehand. LaShoy, I see you have your hand up. Do you have a question? You go right ahead. I don't know if that was from the previous question I asked, so. Yeah? Okay, was it prior? Okay, good. No problem at all. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we can, or you can type it in the chat. All right. Another thing is to identify key concepts. No, we want to identify key concepts. All right. And this is another thing that will guide you. When you learn the important concepts and the definitions for each thing, that definitely helps you, because sometimes, depending on if it's crunch time, you may not be able to cover 3 months of content or knowledge in 1 week. All right. And I'm sure some of us could identify with the pressure to cover 2.5 or 3 months of information in the space of 1 week for 5 courses. That's a lot. All right. So make sure you familiarize yourselves with the major concepts. And that's so in the worst case scenario, just focus on the main concepts. At least you could use the jargon. At least you know what the concepts mean. You may remember some case studies or examples of it. And that's a good way to kind of at least get that bare minimum preparation in. Another thing, identify the content of the questions you will most likely be asked. So if you've been attending your classes or, keeping up with your course along the way, you would probably hear the lecturer say something along the lines of, this might come for exam, or this is important, or, that, and that would automatically get your antennas up, not so? So, so you definitely want to go through that, the content, and a good way to do that is use the course outline. I think someone said earlier that they use the course learning objectives. So use the course outline where you have the learning objectives, you have the topics and the course schedule and so on. Those things help, and it's basic. It helps you in adding some order, so it's not chaotic and overwhelming, and then you feel stressed and so on after. So definitely you want to be mindful of these 4 tips. Now, additional tips, we have, you don't want to just focus on basic memorization. All right. Has anyone ever gone, you crammed a lot for the exam, and then you get into the exam room, and what happens? Anybody could tell me? You could use your mics. You can use your mics or the chat. You cram a lot. You study all of this. You review all of this information, and then when you get to the exam, what happens? In some cases, not all, but some cases. You can use the chat or you can use your mic, and this is an interactive session. So I'm going to ask you to pause and to comment and to chime in when necessary. All right. I see we have a comment there. Yeah. I think we have, let's see. Right. Dana said you forget. Yes, you forget. And that's perfectly normal. What else is there? You fail to apply the knowledge gained. Wow. Thank you for that. You shut down. You shut down, right? Michelle said, if you forget one vowel, you forget it, right? Because it's so much pressure. It's like one little thing could tip it over. All right. And that's why you don't want to focus on just basic memorization of facts. You want to make sure you could almost personalize it, right? I find when I personalize information, it stores more. In doing so, I connect it to long-term memory. So it's easier for me to remember if it's a case study, for example. Now, I like geography, right? I love geography. I used to teach geography and so on. And so a lot of my examples might be about geography, all right, or mathematics. I'm not good at, I didn't like mathematics back in the day, but you had to do it. But one of the things that made it real for me in terms of geography was really trying to summarize it. So, or find an example that I could identify with. So for example, if I know there's a particular let's say I'm looking at coastal environments, all right, in geography. And I can't remember the types of waves, right? The constructive waves, the destructive waves, etc., etc. Then you know what I will do? Just go to a beach and see, see for myself what happens, and then try to put in my own words or explain what is happening at that coastline. All right. And that way helped me to, doing that helped me to remember things that I didn't even like, topics that I didn't even like, facts and information, bits of information I didn't even like, I was able to remember because I connected it to a personal situation or personal experience. And then I was able to summarize the information right there. So a lot of times when you summarize it or put it into your own words or make it personal, it stores, whether you know it or not, that's how the brain works. It stores it into more long-term memory, and it's easy to retrieve when you get into the exam. I see we have some comments in the chat. Oh, okay. All right. So we have that. And then the next thing is to review and practice. Practice, practice, practice. Practice makes improvement. Some people say practice makes permanent, but at least it improves, right? So I think some of you mentioned that in the poll where you may practice questions. Now, the thing about this is you may not always have practice questions, let's say in the library. I think when I met with some students a couple of weeks ago in preparation for this session, they did mention that. Have you ever tried accessing past papers in the library or encountered errors in accessing past paper questions? Anybody, you could tell me yes or no, or you could raise your hand, thumbs up, whichever one. Let's see. Anybody? Okay, so I think we're seeing in the chat. Rochelle said, yes, I have. Good, good. I mean, it's not good, but I mean, it's, thank you for letting us know. Anya, they're not very recent. Okay, how recent is recent? Or how recent is not very recent? As in 2015, 2014, 2001? Yeah? Oh, 2012. I was joking when I said 2001, but 2000, okay, 2012. Right. So you know what helps with that? Just to give you some tips, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I think if you collaborate, if you could find a study partner or study partners, and you may not have to use your study partners for everything, but at least to practice and drill these questions, past paper questions. All right. You could formulate your own questions as well. All right. When I was preparing for my exams, that's what I did because I couldn't really find exam past paper questions and so on. So what I did, I structured questions on my own or looked for questions online, and even reword questions. So that way, you know, when I see keywords in the exam room, I can, oh, I remember that. I remember seeing that concept. I remember seeing that, and you know how to navigate with those. All right. So in addition to that, once you find your practice questions, you want to drill. Now I'm highlighting these words for you so you know, right? So it's summarize, review and practice, and drill. So you don't just practice the question once or twice. Practice means it's a repeated, yeah? So you drill the problem or the weak areas. Don't just focus on the areas that you are good at. I remember trying to help a couple of students in preparing for their exams. And I would ask them, okay, so you did past paper questions. Yes. All right, good. So how many you did? I did X, Y, and Z. All right. And what topics you focused on? Okay, I focused on hydrology and volcanoes and soil. All right. Okay, good. How come you managed to choose those topics? Well, because I like them, I'm good at them. So why would you practice what you're good at, right? So focus, you know, you don't want to just work hard, you want to work smart, right? Work smart. And that will help you a lot. So one of the smartest ways to work is to focus on the weak areas, even though you don't want to, they're not the most pleasant experience because it's a lot of stress to strengthen those weak areas or work on those weak areas and make them strong. But it's better you do that than wait until you're in the exam and a weak area comes up to you. I remember in a particular exam, I was not full, you know, how to say this? I ignored a weak area. Let's say it like that. It was a course in UWI, all right? And I ignored this particular week here in preparation for the exam. And I even told the lecturer, don't bring that, right? I know I was just, yeah. So they sure enough in the exam, that's what came. And to my despair, I didn't know what to do with it. I just kind of bluffed my way, all right? So I don't want that to happen to you. So drill the problem areas or drill the weak areas so that you become comfortable with them. There's a saying that goes something like this. It's only difficult or impossible until it's done, all right? So do it a couple times and you'll get used to it and you would not be so shell-shocked or stunned when you see it in the exam room. Again, as I said before, collaborate with other well-prepared students. Notice the emphasis is well-prepared students, not the underprepared. You don't want to be like this and then you come down like this. No, no, no. You want to kind of pace each other on the road to excellence or success, all right? Any questions thus far? I see Anya said you've seen papers from 2023. Sorry, 2003. Wow. So literally 20 years ago. So more than likely, those questions may not be as relevant. It depends on the field, of course, and the nature of the questions. But by all means, you want to make sure you give yourself let's say a time span of, let's say, 5 years, 3 to 5 years. That is a safe space to work with, as opposed to 20 years ago. All right. All right. So let's move on very quickly. Again, preparation begins early. The more time you give yourself for preparation is the easier it will become, because then you can implement your study schedule, your study plan, etc. When navigating through, if you're in preparation for MCQs and SAQs, focus on the details, because sometimes if you just focus on the general facts, then the whole point of multiple choice questions, notice it, I'm giving some secrets from the other side of things. You will have a lot of distractions. All right, you're gonna have a lot of distractions, or distractors. So you need to know and be sure that you know the details, because the details are the little, the little fine things that could make the difference in terms of you selecting A, B, C, or D, or however you want to answer. I don't know if Dr. Jones and even Mrs. Stewart McCoy might want to chime in here, all right? In terms of this tip to focus on the details, yeah? Dr. Jones? Your mic is off. All right. Okay, that's okay. She'll chime in whenever. Michelle, I don't know if you are there as well, or if you can turn on your mic or not, or type in the chat. But we'll continue in the meantime. Again, most persons cannot retain many details effectively in short-term memory. And that's why I said make it personal. So if you're doing psychology, and you're learning about a particular, you're having difficulty remembering something like the Oedipus complex, all right? Or the Electra complex, or the Freudian slip. Make it personal. Did you ever say something that was out of timing? And you had to, why did that come out? Why did that slip? And the Freudian slip is when you basically that. When you say something, it slipped. You said something that you weren't supposed to say. All right. Has that ever happened to anybody? First things first. Has it happened to anybody? Mr. Mohammed said all the time. Don't be afraid. No, we're not busting fires, but has it happened to anybody? You could just answer, right? If it's yes, no, etc. But usually, Randy said yes. Usually that might stem from, a personal experience. So again, once you understand how the brain works, you're able to, I don't want to say manipulate it, but you're able to manage it to your advantage. Yeah. So if you can't remember details effectively in short-term memory, just connect it to a personal experience. If you're in medicine, for example, I was giving the example of psychology. If you had your heart broken, you experience grief and so on, then you want, and there are different terms, of course, in psychology. that would relate to that. So you just relay your experience to that concept and the process you went through, the grieving process. What's the other example? If you fell to banker, yes, as you say here, to banker, right? If you've experienced a banker, then you relate the psychology concepts to what you went through, and it makes it easy to remember. All right. If you fell and you fell off, you're trying to ride a bicycle, or you were running on some track trying to do some physical fitness, and you tumble, you fell. In other words, as we say, as you kill kitty, right? What are the how did you treat the wounds? Did you twist a muscle, or damage a bone or whatnot? So how did you treat those wounds? If you went to a particular space and you realize there are certain potential dangers, how did you understand what I'm saying? So you make it authentic or real to you, and that helps you to remember, almost like in the long-term memory, as much as possible, right? Another thing is to practice a bit each day, right? Memory, or long-term memory in particular, it's a process. It takes a little while. So this is why I said you have to prepare from early and do a little bit each day. You come back to it, and then eventually you're a master at it. All right? Mastery doesn't come like that. It may take a while to develop. Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say. I remember when I was doing mathematics, right? I used to struggle with simultaneous equations. Do we have any math majors here? Anyone doing mathematics courses here? Just raise your hand, give a thumbs up. Joseph said yes. Joseph, okay, I don't mean to highlight you, but Joseph, did you encounter any difficulties in mathematics? You could use a mic, or you could type in the chat. Did you encounter any hurdles?
I encountered quite a few difficulties.
Sorry?
I encountered quite a few difficulties with the maths courses.
Right. What was one difficulty you encountered?
One difficulty so far that I found really hardest topic for me was logs. When the lecturer was explaining logs, I lost it in that topic at all.
Right. And what did you do to help overcome that, if you did?
I came back home and I started reading through some past papers and asked for extra practice questions, and I ended up starting to better myself in the topic.
Right. And did you do all of that in one day, or did it take a while to develop?
It took about 2 weeks to get back to understand it completely.
Good. And how are you in this field now, in that particular topic?
In that particular topic, I would say I'm fairly okay with it now.
Nice. So you see, that's a good example. Thank you so much for that, Joseph. That's a good example, guys, of how you take a little bit each day, and then you become comfortable, and in some cases a master at it. All right, which is again why early preparation is so important. All right. Part of your early preparation, as we said earlier, even in the icebreaker, you want to focus on your class notes. Again, terms and concepts. That's a good way to start. For me personally, writing it down or typing it, I prefer writing, because you remember more of what you do than what you hear or what you see. So sometimes writing it down yourself, the concept and the definition, that's another way of storing it into long-term memory. One of the things that I do, and this is just I'm giving you a little tip here, extra tip, a bonus tip. One of the things that I do is just before you go to bed is a good time to review those concepts and terms and definitions. Why is that so? Anybody could tell me? Has anyone tried that technique? Let me make it personal to you. For those of you who Netflix and chill, right? Have you ever fallen asleep while watching a show? And you could say, you could answer, no judgment here. You could answer, we're comfortable here, right? We're open here. So, right, Rochelle said yes. Right, so Rochelle, let's say you fell asleep during a particular show. When you woke up, do you remember what that show was about or what you last saw on that show? Has that ever happened to you? So for example, if you looked at, let me find a show. What's a good show, Mr. Mohammed, that is showing, or Randy, what's a good show that's going on now? Anybody could tell me, what's a good show? That a show that is, you know, okay, let's say Black Panther, Wakanda, well, yeah, I guess, okay. Or let's say Shazam, right? That movie was out fairly recently. All right. King of Queens. Friday, right, good. So, okay, so let's say when you looked at it, Rochelle, and you fell asleep, and then you woke up, let's say in the morning or a couple hours after, did you realize that you could almost picture exactly what, almost like an image in your mind? You could remember exactly what you saw before you fell asleep? Yes, exactly. So it's true. So what I try to do is, if I'm preparing for an exam, I like to read certain things, like, for example, fundamental terms and concepts. Not just before, but at least within that time period, let's say an hour before I go and sleep. Because when I get up, it's first of all, while sleeping, it's processing. The brain is still, you know, working. And the medical students could probably chime in here if necessary. But you can definitely, it gets stored into memory, more working memory. And then, of course, when you get up in the morning, you could recite it, you could recall it, you could, you know, and it's almost like a fresh, almost like if you just put your laptop on sleep, and then you open up and it's still there. All right. Let's see some of the comments we have in the chat, Mr. Mohammed. So Tanasha said, yes, I believe the memory consolidation process works best during sleep. Exactly. Tanasha, you're using the concept, man. Tanasha, are you in psychology or any of those fields? I like that you're using the jargon. All right.
I did a psychology course, but I'm not majoring in psychology.
Right, there you go. But at least you have some exposure to it. Right, good. Rochelle said, I've had that experience. Good. So you see there's some truth to it, right? And well, I told you from my experience as well. So I'll be sharing a lot of my experiences, and I encourage you to do yours, so at least we could learn from each other. Another thing is to create a list of readings. Sometimes you could feel very overwhelmed when trying to go over all this content in preparation for one exam in the space of 1 week or less. It's good to have to categorize your readings accordingly and go through bit by bit. Again, highlight concepts and definitions. Rephrase, summarize, or personalize, right? And like I said, brainstorm questions with others where necessary. That's a good way to kind of, because sometimes you might think of something and then somebody else might come with something that you didn't think of, but you need to know, all right? So it helps you prepare. So nothing catches you by surprise, basically. And of course, practice questions. You can do that with others as well. Collaborate in that regard. Now, let me just move the slideshow a little further. And so, you know, in preparing for your exam, you know, you feel stressed. Even now, you said you're stressed, all right? And when we say anxiety, like I said, you worry, you're fearful, you're nervous, somebody said, or some people said, you're stressed out, all right? An exam is not a good experience. We don't like that, all right? We don't like exams. So we want to make sure that it's never a pleasant experience, all right? We're not saying to make sure it's a unpleasant experience. I'm saying that it's never a pleasant experience, because who wants to go through an exam? You don't necessarily look forward or say, hey, I want to do an exam, right? So so to minimize this, and this is just skimming the surface, tomorrow we'll go further into that. But to minimize that, you want to be holistically prepared. What do I mean by holistically prepared? You don't want to know the content, so you're intellectually prepared, but then you're physically drained and you fall asleep in the exam. Has anyone ever fell asleep in an exam? Because the psychological and emotional part of it, or mental part of it, you're just drained. You can't do anymore. Has anyone ever? Right? Oh, you said no. Thankfully, no. Okay, good. Has anyone ever how to say this, gotten emotional in an exam? Whether you started to cry, you started to get upset, you started to get angry. Has that ever happened to anyone? Or sometimes you may have, you know, you freeze up because you saw a question that you didn't expect and you froze. You could post in the chat, let me drink some tea. Has that ever happened to anyone? No? And it's odd because I have an anxiety. Ah, okay, good. And you know, it's good that you identify that that is a disorder you have and you know how to tackle it, yeah? And if you need to get further support in that regard, you can definitely go to student services or formerly student advisory services, now Department of Student Services and Development, or you can even go to the counseling unit. All right, that's at the health services unit on campus. So that's just in case you need some additional assistance there. But it's good that you are able to identify that, because when you know what it is, you know how to deal with it, yeah, and how to navigate through it. Right, you've gone to both. Very good, very good. That's Tanasha. Very good. I also suggest, and it's up to you, I don't know if it works for you or not, or if you've experienced your experience was a little different than mine, but you want to avoid other students just before the exam. Have you ever, just before the morning of an exam, you're going to the exam room, and then you realize that you meet 2 or 3 other persons from your class, and then they tell you certain things, and then you start to panic. Tanasha said, yes, yes. Right. So me personally, I prefer to avoid having excessive conversations with other students just before the exam, because then they're going to say things that I really don't want to hear. And then I start freaking out, right? So you don't want that. Tanasha said, yes, everyone is freaking out, right? You could post that, you could highlight that, Mr. Mohammed, right? Yes, it happens when you know you meet up with your friends and you really have the best intentions, but what happens is that, you know, they say things that you think, oh, I didn't really study that. I don't think I'm prepared for that. I don't, you know, and then you start to get jittery and panicky and you start to freak out, as Tanasha said. All right. Arrive to the examination, whether it's online or face-to-face, early, not too early, because if you're too early, you're probably going to encounter students who will make you nervous as well, right? So I like to arrive within half an hour before the exam, find a quiet space, and then when I'm going to the exam room, I go when I'm needed, because you don't want to cut it too close and then you forget whether it's your calculator or, you know, whatever it might be, because in some fields you need certain devices. All right. So make sure, that brings me to my other point, make sure you have all your accessories, where necessary and approved accessories. All right, whether it's your calculators, your glasses, if you know you need the specs, right? Make sure you have the necessary things. Your phones, right? Your phone is another one that you know you cannot, well, obviously you can't go in the exam with your phone, right? So you want to secure that. Sometimes you might have to, if you're coming on campus for the exam, you might have to go and find a park, and you know, parking may not always be the easiest thing to find, right? So you want to give yourself that opportunity to prepare and settle and just keep a calm mind when going into this exam. The exam is already stressful, we know this. It could be very stressful. So you want to do as much as you can before and even during, so that it doesn't stress you out unnecessarily, all right? And even if you don't know everything, that's okay. You're not expected to know everything. What you want to make sure is that you know enough so that you can navigate your way through. So for example, if you're doing literatures in English, all right, you may know, and you're studying a course, you did a course in Shakespeare. You might know Shakespearean comedy, Shakespearean romance, such as Romeo and Juliet. Not Dr. Juliet, just saying in the session, but you might know Romeo and Juliet, or you might know Hamlet or Othello, the tragedies, but you may not know specific quotes, right? You may not know every quote, important quote in the text, but at least you know the text, you know the themes, you know the characters, you know the scenes, so you could navigate your way through, right? And paraphrase if necessary. So it's okay if you don't know everything. That's okay. As I say, don't be tough. Hashtag DBU, don't be tough, right? Once you know enough, then you could navigate your way through. All right? Any questions so far? And hashtag don't be tough, right? DBU. I know you're familiar with that, right? All right. Any questions so far on these tips? All right. So in essence, you want to give yourself what I call tunnel vision, right? You just focus on what is important. You don't go to the side and get the side talk that makes you nervous with other students, or you don't start to worry about, okay, parking, I didn't reach here on time. I didn't know. Tunnel vision. You came on campus. If it's on campus, you came there to do, yes, you can feature that. Feature that. Just don't forget your ID. I like that on you. So you could feature that on the screen. So yes, sometimes you might forget something in the car and you have to, or wherever you left it, and you have to run back to get it. All right. You want to give yourself time for that, right? So keep that in mind. You're there to do this exam, whether it's face-to-face or online. That's your objective at that particular time. To get this exam done, do it to the best of my ability, and do it with as little stress as is humanly possible. All right? So far, so good? Let's move on. So tomorrow, we're going to have a session, as I mentioned, coping with exam anxiety. Now, I just skimmed the surface there, but Dr. Jones and I will be spearheading the session to really target those more specific issues and really addressing those things, all right? And to make sure that you have the best possible experience in an uncomfortable situation, because an exam is never a comfortable thing per se, but you can be as comfortable as possible. So for example, if you ever go on the boat ride from Trinidad to Tobago, you know, when you get to that Bocas part where it's rough, right? Has anyone ever experienced that? Or does anyone ever experience motion sickness? No? No? Absolutely, yes. But it doesn't mean that you're going to jump off the boat, right? And into the sea. No, you're going to do what you need to do to make sure it's as pleasant as is humanly possible. Whether it is you take whatever tablets to knock you out or to settle your stomach a little bit or whatnot, you adjust to suit. All right. And so this is what we're talking about with coping with exam anxiety. We know exams tend to be a stressful experience, and we want to help you in making that experience less stressful. Right? So we could probably just say coping with exam and not coping with exam anxiety, because we want to take out the anxiety or minimize the anxiety from it. So let's get back to it. So stage 2, during the exam. During the exam, we want to make sure, let's say when you're doing this multiple choice or short answer question, you want to make sure, one of the first tips I'm going to tell you is read the question carefully. Have you ever misread a question and you're quick to select, oh, A, the answer is always A. And then you realize that, okay, no, it's not A, right? Has anyone ever had that experience? Let me call some names. Let's see, Bradshaw. I see you just have J. Bradshaw. Have you ever experienced that, Bradshaw? You can tell me. You can type it in the chat. Or Chris. Have you ever misread a question? Right, you said, right, certainly, good. All right, it happens to everyone, and nothing is wrong with that per se. But I'm just giving you a tip to, right, Latoya, nice, good. So it's something that we can all relate to. It happened, but just take the time to read your question carefully. How do you do that? You identify the keywords. Again, the definitions. Remember, I mentioned that you look at definitions beforehand. So concepts or definitions. Identify what is being asked. What is being asked? All right. so you don't misinterpret the question. If you need to, underline the keywords. If it's a face-to-face, if it's a physical exam, all right? You have a hard copy exam script, underline the words that are important, all right? Sometimes you might have a question, which of the following is not true? And then you go and select the one that is true, but the question was asking which one is not true, all right? So, or vice versa. So make sure you read the question carefully. With regard to MCQs, what I've done in the past is cover up the possible responses while reading the question. So you could read the question. So let's say the question is here and the options are here. I will cover the options and read the question itself and come up with my answer rationally, of course, and then look at the different options and select that one, the one that is fitting with my answer without C. Because remember, like I said, multiple choice quizzes or questions are built to distract. Well, not built to distract, but they're built with several distractors. All right. So when you have A, B, C, D, sometimes E, right? You have one answer most times, and then you have other options. The other options are what we call distractors. All right. So be mindful of that. So sometimes I have to take away just I don't want to see it. No, you block the distractors and you go forward with the rest of the you select the possible answer. All right. Thirdly, oh, I think did I miss something there? No? Okay, good. Thirdly, you want to pace yourself, especially if it's a short answer, an essay type of exam. You don't want to spend too much time on one question. I struggled with that, to be quite honest with you. I like to write just to show that I know, because you want to put everything in this answer and you want to make sure you get all the marks. But then what happened to me then was I focused so much on the 5-mark question, or the question that is worth like 5 marks, 2 marks, 3 marks, that I missed the one that was worth 20 marks, right? And you're probably saying that, you're probably laughing because I wasn't the wisest thing, right? But it happened to me, so that's what I'm telling you. So you don't experience that, right? I see Chris is saying, read, yes, read and reread and reread again, right? I don't know, I'll ask Mr. Muhammad to highlight that comment too, because that is some good advice there, Chris. Read and reread and reread again. I know it sounds redundant, but it's intentionally so, right? And yes, pace yourself. So watch your time. Whether you have your watch, you watch it, watch your time, right? All right. Don't spend too much time on one question. What I've learned over the years is that you do your best and move on to the rest. Because when you are stuck at this one question, you are denying yourself marks and opportunities to complete the others, right? So if you're not too sure, stick a pin, mark it or something, and then come back to it, all right? But make sure you come back to it, because you want to make sure you answer all your questions. Because let's say if you have a question, an exam that has 10 questions, but they're all worth 5 marks, right? So the exam is out of 50. I think I'm doing my math correct. All right. And you only answered 2 questions and you didn't answer the other 8 questions. Then that means you're automatically only giving yourself out of 20 out of 50. So you automatically fail. So that's why it's important to answer all the questions. Even if you get 1 mark per question, you still could pass, you know what I mean? Or you might get 2 marks per question, you could still make a difference, as opposed to just starting with a fail mark because you didn't answer all the questions, all right? So, also, another thing as you navigate through the different questions, especially with multiple choice questions, and that's why I put, short answer questions, that's why I put hashtag SAQs, hashtag MCQs. When it comes to SAQs and also with MCQs, look at the neighboring questions, right? What are the other questions asking? Because sometimes these questions are very connected, especially with short answer questions. You might see the stem or a paragraph with a case study or something. Then you'll see part 1, part 2, part 3. Have you ever experienced that? You can tell me. Structured questions? No? I'm sure you have. All right. Always look at the neighboring questions because you might get one part wrong and you're not sure about one part, but then when you read the connecting questions, you realize they are, the answer might be in the next one, or the hint or clue might be in the next one. All right. So be mindful of that. If you can, if it's online and you can go back, backward navigation is allowed, by all means, you can come back to it. All right. So pace yourself. Now, you would notice I put a title for each. So neighbor oi, right? You look at your neighbor oi, right? If you can't figure out this question, go on to the next question and it might help you answer that question and the one before. All right. Next, no one left behind. And that was intentionally spelled, right? If you can't figure out the answer to a question, what do you do? What do you do? Do you leave it out? Or do you answer the question? Or take an educated guess? All right. Always be sure to answer every question. Any questions about this? Hopefully I can answer. Let me take some questions. Any questions about this? What about not leaving any question behind? Is that even a possibility? No? All right, so far so good. Is any questions? Okay. Right, Chris said correct. I think we have a couple things, right? You at least have a chance. Exactly. Anya, let me hit you a high five. Boom. Right? Yes, you give yourself a chance as opposed to just you start wrong to start with because you didn't even answer the question, so give yourself a chance. Next question, next comment. Make an educated guess. Never not answer multiple choice guesses, right? Because sometimes a multiple choice question could be worth 2 marks or 3 marks, depending on how it's structured. So you don't want to deny yourself of those 3 marks. All right. Thank you so much for that. All right. So thank you so much for that. So always take an educated guess. If you can't figure it out, you might probably leave it for a while and then come back, but make sure you come back and address it. The next thing is that your final answer? I don't know how many of you know the game Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Is that your final answer? I would suggest that you avoid changing answers repeatedly. Very often I've found that your first choice is usually the correct choice. And I would recommend, if you're doing that, only change unless it's necessary. All right? Only change unless it's necessary. Right? I remember doing, what subject was that, boy? Probably biology in school. And I studied for it. First of all, I crammed. That was the first thing. I started wrong, right? I crammed. And then when I went into the exam, it was a multiple choice exam. And I don't know if it was CSEC or A-levels or something. I can't remember. But I went into the exam. I did I went through and I finished. I was like, what's this? I finished with time to spare, And I went back. I reviewed my answers. And I changed the majority of the answers. And when I changed the answers, I changed from the correct answers to the wrong answers. So that's why I'm saying that, you want to make sure you only change your answer unless you're 100% sure that you made a mistake initially. All right. So yes, while you might make an educated guess, always, you make an educated guess by sometimes a process of elimination. You may not know the content intimately or deeply, but at least you know enough to kind of navigate your way through. All right. Elimination process, not you. What do I mean by that? Hashtag MCQs. So it's pertaining to MCQs in particular. If you have some knowledge about a question, you could, by process of elimination, as I said before, eliminate the choices that you know are not correct. You could do that if it's a hard copy exam. You could cross out, put a pen on each. All right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, right. You can hear me. Good. All right. And so what I need, so good. So yeah, so once you know what is right, you can eliminate what is not. All right. So that's a good way to kind of, again, put aside the distractors. And I'll give you some examples in just a minute. So you could put an X on it, you could put, you know, whatnot, what helps you navigate through it. Let me move on to next slide. Sometimes the correct answer is not always the right answer. All right. What do I mean by that? It's there actually. If you have a correct statement, it may not, within the context of the question, it may not be correct. Have you ever encountered that? Bradshaw, you're right, you said that, good. Because sometimes you might see the statement because you see it has the concept or the definition that you saw, that you studied and you're familiar with. So you see something along the lines, and in this phenomenon is called Brownian movement. Oh, Brownian movement, I studied that. Okay, bam, that has to be the answer, right? But it doesn't answer the question. So you might see a bunch of responses or options that might be correct, but they do not answer the question. So it's wrong. All right. So all of that, and it goes back to the same point I had before. Always read your questions carefully. Oh, look, right. You could do this session for me, right? That's why it's important to read your questions carefully. All right. So not always be, like I said, remember multiple choice questions, especially, they know, just think of multiple choice questions as, how to say it, boy, full of imposters, right? Full of distractions. So you now have to sift through what is correct. And in order to do that, you need to be familiar with your content, right? Which is why preparation is key. Next, so we have an example here. So I did these examples to kind of give you some experience in eliminating and handling a multiple choice question. So here's the question. On a world scale, livestock perform many, let me read it in the voice. On a world scale, livestock perform many functions. Identify the least important one. #move, right? And the possible answers are draft power, milk and meat, manure, personal status, or building materials. All right, now let's put the context to determine the appropriate answer. Now, let's say you were enrolled in a geography class. Do we have any geography students here by chance? Or any science students here? You could just put your hand up or put a thumbs up. Do we have any science and agriculture students here or engineering students here? No? This is something, wow. Okay, so let's say we were in a human geography class and you read a chapter about livestock. And this is not rocket science. So livestock in India, which may have also been discussed obviously in the classes, right? Let me ask you here, how would you answer, or what do you think is the correct answer? Let me call someone who has not chimed in yet. Mitzi. Can you answer this question? What do you think is the answer to this question? And it's okay if you're wrong, eh? We're all here for that.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
Well, my process would be to eliminate. So in terms of answering the question, I'm not really sure in terms of the agricultural aspect, but I don't
That's okay.
believe that building materials would be one of the functions,
Mm-hmm.
as well as draft power. Sorry about that, that's my doggy.
That's good. Good doggy. Mm-hmm.
So A and E will be out of the question in terms of
Okay.
the answer.
Okay.
So it will be up to, I guess, B, C, and D.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
All
with
right.
regards to livestock, I think milk and meat is the most important one. But the
Mm-hmm.
question asks for the least important, so then it will have to be between C and D. And I think also C would be beneficial, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but that could be more so with agriculture. And I really isn't. So between C and D, I'm not really sure, but I would go with
I'm enjoying this, by the way. I like this. Go ahead.
the least important. Probably B. I see other people saying D.
So some people are saying, Latoya said D. All right, let's go back up to Latoya. She said D. Latoya, why did you say D? You could put it in the chat. You could put it in the chat, or you could use your mic, anyone. Latoya. In the meantime, the Latoya, not yet. Okay. Anya, personal status because of religion. Oh, okay. I like that. I like where you're going with that. Okay. Okay. Anya, I like that twist. I didn't think of that.
Because the personal status don't have nothing to do with what the question asks. They say livestock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they say on a world scale, livestock perform many functions. Identify the least important one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think my personal status will be relevant.
Okay. All right. I like where you're going with that. Good. And Anya said the same thing, personal status. Michelle said, is this a trick question?
And I have opened my mind here because
Yes.
you said livestock, even though you have a picture of a cow, you said livestock, right? And I'm thinking that if you and it says livestock perform many functions, and I'd like to think that wherever you are, whatever type of livestock you have, it would propel you upward.
Right.
So personal status would not be one for me. So I'm looking at all of them, I'm thinking out all of these things, and then I look at the information that you put at the bottom, and so the only thing I could ask is, this a trick question? It forces you to think, but what is it? Are we located in India? Are we making references to India? Are we talking about cattle per se? Or are we talking about livestock, which is, so.
No, think of it like this. Remember I said that multiple choice questions are full of imposters and distractors. So some things in there help to deter you or distract you from the real answer. So you sometimes have to know that you know. And even if you don't know, you kind of go through a process of elimination, so to speak. All right. So I see we have some other responses. I see Anya said, least important is milk and meat in India. Okay, Anya, why did you say that? Why you think that's least important in India? And Michelle agreed with that, by the way. Right? And Mitzi said, I think it's C. Mitzi, why do you think it's C?
Hi, me again. I think because with regards to the question, livestock in particular, I think B and C would more so, well, at least for me, it stands out with regards to the functions.
Right.
And milk and meat for sure, because livestock is rare for the meat.
Right.
Or maybe as milk for produce, that will be the most important one. Aside from India, of course, because they view them as holy.
Right. Okay.
But with respect to the question, the least important one will be 152, it should be manual. Yeah, so that's my guess.
Okay, all right. So you're trying to make an educated guess. Rochelle said E, building materials. And then I think Miss Byron Holder said E. Nisha, why do you say E? Why did you say E? You could tell me. Why do you think it's E? You could type it in the chat. And Rochelle, you could probably use your mic in the meantime.
I think it's E. Because a lot of things throw in your off here for this question. You have livestock, but then they come in with a little case in the bottom talking about India. And you have the cow. When you see the cow and you see India, you're thinking you're talking about cattle. And of course, you know, in India, they have certain things where they say the cow, they don't use it for whatever. Right? And but you talk about livestock. I don't know. Well, in the class, I don't know what was discussed about livestock. But livestock spans across different type of animals. So I go back to the question and I look and I say identify the least important one when it comes to livestock. I don't even bother to look at this thing at the bottom again because that's true anymore. Right? And I will say building materials because I can't see using livestock in terms of building material.
All right, good. And I see
use my process of elimination.
Right, I like that. And I see Anya saying the same thing. I've always heard cattle is revered. She also said, if we are in fact talking about cattle, and I have no idea how livestock can be used for building materials. Okay, I like the process of elimination here. So let's reveal. Now this was a little, like I said, it's somewhat of a trick question, yes, Michelle. But remember, it's the least important. It's not that it can't do any of, it's the least, that's the key word there, one of the key words. So let's go through this process. Answers A, B, and C are obviously correct, right? In the sense that we know that cattle or livestock or what have you can be used for A, B, and C to draft power, for milk and meat, and for manure. Now, remember, it's the one that is least, right, important. So you've reduced the answer, basically. If you know that you eliminated A, B, and C, you're basically left with D and E. So it could either be E or D, right? So I guess this is if you look at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, it's like you do a 50-50. So you took out the first couple answers and then possible answers and then or options, and you're left with 2. But even without knowing the correct answer, as it says here, you could kind of decide between the 2, right? Anyone wants to take an educated guess between D and E, what the answer might be? Oh, that rhymes, huh?
It's E.
Everyone agrees?
Because, come on, if the more livestock I have, of course I will have a high personal status. It will show I have some sort of wealth.
Very true, very true. And of course, this is in the context of India and so on. So this is true. So now you're left with E, right? To construct now, as you see the rationale here. So the answer actually is E. Congratulations to Anya and Nisha. All right, and anyone who said D, I'm sorry, E. All right, we could put, Randy, you could put a little clap in the chat, please. We don't have any prizes for that, but what we do have is another question. All right, here we go. And for this question, this is it here. Institutions have geographical manifestations which include all but one of the following. Possible answers: location, ecological, material structures, spatial patterns, social hierarchy. All right, again, the question: institutions have geographical manifestations which include all but one of the following. Hint, hint. Here's the explanation here. If you're enrolled in cultural landscapes, material was discussed in class, right? So that's the context. We know that geography is about space and the material content of places. What do you think is the answer? Anybody want to take a guess? Mr. Mohammed is here with me trying to figure it out as well. If you see him busting his brain, but all right. Anybody wants to take a guess? You can type it in the chat or use your mic. Could it be A, location, B, ecological, C, material structures, D, spatial patterns, E, social hierarchy? This one is a little more complex. I need at least one person to take a guess. Just think of it like this. If it's, oh, I think we have Mitzi said E. Is that your final answer, Mitzi? Right, I see we have 2 responses for E again. Right. Mitzi said yes, she said yes, it's a final answer. All right. Mitzi, why do you think it's E? Just to hear your rationale here. And Nisha, why do you think it's D?
Hi, I think it's E because questions A to D, the answer, sorry, A to D tends to focus on the question, which is geographical manifestations, and at the hint at the bottom there, it said stuff is to do with cultural landscape and material and stuff, and all the answers except for E involves some sort of geographical manifestation. So
I like what you did there. You see how that is a very good example, Mitzi, of what you should do, right? In the sense that you looked at the categorization of what each answer, what each option pertains to, and you kind of picked out one that is not like the other song, one of these things is not like the other, right? So that's a very good approach. Nisha said she thinks it's D. Okay, let's see what, let's go through very quickly. All right, so let's see. So remember, it's all but one. So we know it can't have one, right? We know that answers A and D are correct. All right, material structures, which is C, in contrast to non-material structures, all right, such as these other things, which means that E, social hierarchy, cannot be correct. Let's see the rest. Furthermore, cultural landscapes include buildings and all structures, example, walls, fences, billboards, freeways, etc. C is then, therefore, also correct. All right. Places also include environmental elements of topography, climate, and vegetation. So B is also correct. All right. So, Anya, just to cut a long story short, E is the answer. All right, because it is the only one that doesn't have anything to do with the others. All right, with location and ecological and all these other things, environmental factors. All right, so congratulations, Anya. Randy, you could probably post the round of applause there. And as we come down to the end, just a couple more slides. All of the above is not always correct. So just because you see all of the above doesn't mean that that is the correct answer. That's sometimes one of the biggest distractions you will find in a multiple choice question. All right, so always look and look again, read and read again. If you're 100% sure that one of the options or statements is true, then obviously none of the above cannot be correct. All right, so whether it's all of the above or none of the above, always, when you see those are red flags. Just be mindful of that. So look at them differently or closely. Hot cross out. So you go backward never, unless it's enabled. All right. So keep that in mind. If you are confident in what the options the selections you've made, then you don't have any reason to go back per se. All right. With regard to no patterns, I used to. When I didn't know the answer and I really just wanted to skate through the exam, and this is of course at probably CSEC level, I would do those answer sheets. You had one row of the first 30 questions and another row of column, of the second half of the 60 questions. And I would go A, B, C, D, D, C, B, A, then A, B. So you get a kind of zigzag pattern, right? And for me, it would look good, but most times it had the majority of those answers, those selections were wrong. So you don't really want to look for a pattern, and especially now where options can be randomized, you're probably not going to find a pattern to choose from. So you want to make an educated guess, not a patterned guess. So one more tip, you know, these are some words that are also distractors. Sometimes, not always or never. Those are words that kind of play with your mind a little bit or distract you. So be mindful of them, right? If an answer includes never, for example, a single counterexample will indicate the answer is not correct. So if you see something that such and such never happens under so-and-so parameters, but then you know of a case study where it actually did. So therefore it's not correct, right? It could never be never, never say never. All right, as they say. So keep that in mind. You know, the best way to do well, I mean, yes, you could try to know all the right answers, but preparation is still key. And so, you know, we go back to this graphic with stage 1 we did already, stage 2 we did already, and we get to stage 3. Now, how do you feel after an exam? I think we discussed this earlier, right? Do you feel bruised and battered and disheveled? All right? Or do you feel despondent, right? When you walk out, because remember, you didn't talk to your classmates, but when you walk out, you overheard them saying, hey, the answer was 45 for question C, for question 60. And you know you didn't see, it wasn't 45 for you, right? And so you feel like, oh my gosh, like you get it wrong. Or do you feel like whatever happened, and that's it, I'm done, and the exam is finished, I have my life back, I could do what I want, I could go online, I could do what I, you know. So, you know, there are different feelings you might experience, all right, when your exam is finished. By all means, you want to make sure you review, but not review to make changes and all these things. Just review to make sure you answered all your questions and whatnot. You don't want to make fundamental changes because it's going to have a snowball effect. And then, of course, you move on. The exam is finished. There's nothing you can do about it. Once you submit that exam script or that paper or that answer, you move on. If you got it wrong, you got it wrong. There's nothing you can do about it, right? The best way to move on is to go and do something that you enjoy, all right? Now, scientifically, this reduces, when you do something you enjoy, when you're under stress, a hormone is produced in your body called cortisol. That's the stress hormone, right? I don't know if you have any med-sci students here, but you could testify to, well, you could confirm this, right? It's scientifically proven. But then when you are doing something that you enjoy, one of the hormones that you experience, or chemicals, is called serotonin. So whether it is you go to eat, you go to watch a movie, you go to line with some friends, you have a games night, you have whatever it might be, just go and relax. Or sometimes you might just go and sleep to catch up on some much needed rest, right? So whatever you do, find time to relax, all right? If you have a hammock, if you want to go for a little, a road trip, do a little walk, do a little run, anything to kind of bring back that balance and that center yourself, so to speak, all right? So just to recap some of the things we looked at today, we looked at various techniques to prepare for an exam. Then we looked at strategies to minimize stress or anxiety, all right, particularly with MCQs and SAQs and true or false questions. We looked at tips in preparing for an exam, and then strategies in identifying the correct answers in a multiple choice exam. So with that said, do we have any questions? I hope this was enjoyable for you. I'm going to ask Mr. Duku to place a link for the, I think you did it already, you could copy it and place it once again, Mr. Duku, the two things, the the link to tomorrow's session for persons to register. If you haven't registered already, I'll ask Mr. Mohammed to do it one time. And Mr. Duku, you could get the link for the evaluation, which will just to load it as well. Okay, so we have both of them there. So let's see, any questions? Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed the session very much. I look forward for tomorrow. I'm from BVI. Yes, thank you.
We definitely appreciate that. And thank you for being here as well.
Thank you much.
Blessings. We really appreciate it. I don't know if you see, did you register for tomorrow's session?
Yes, I already have.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Bye.
Tanasha said it. Oh, just before you leave, Sandra, we have the link to the evaluation link, just to provide us with some feedback in terms of what we did really good or not so good and what we can work on. That feedback will be really, really important. It's a short survey. So if it's placed in the chat, I think Randy, you could probably copy it and place it again.
All right, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Tanasha said it was enjoyable. Thank you so much, Tanasha. I definitely appreciate that. All right. Recording link. Yes, the link to the recording, once it's processed and everything, will be made available, I think, by tomorrow for the latest. All right. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well to be notified. All right. I'll ask Mr. Mohammed to probably place a link, Mr. Mohammed or Mr. Duku, anyone, to place a link to our YouTube channel. So you can subscribe to the YouTube channel and get any kind of a notification once it's up. All right. Does that help? Heather, thank you so much. All right. So, oh, I see we have here. Right. Oh, thank you so much. Bradshaw, I've been calling you Bradshaw all along. What is your first name? June. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, June. Mitzi, you are most welcome. You're most welcome. Chris, likewise. Thank you so much for that. June, this is fun. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you so much. So in terms of support, I'll just go back to the slide very quickly. Right. So we have one more thing. I want you to in terms of any support, all right, we have these avenues for support. Now I want to highlight very, very clearly the Department of Student Services and Development. All right, they are probably your go-to first point of contact, and they put you on to other persons that would provide the additional support. So if you need any sort of counseling, if you need any sort of psychological support, if you need any sort of technical support, you can go to DSSD and they will put you on to other persons that would be able to assist. Even if it's a certain disorder or condition or what, DSSD, that's the department you want to go to first and foremost. If it's something like an online exam that you need My Learning, you need to access My Learning, you can also go to service desk at sta.uwi.edu. That's Campus IT Services, and they will be able to provide you with that support as well. Tanasha, you said they were helpful. Yes. So we recommend DSSD as your primary point of contact. All right. And without further ado, that noise was just in case you fell asleep. I wasn't sure if you would fall asleep. So thank you so much. And we can go to nice. Thank you so much, everyone, for not just attending, but participating. I hope it was enjoyable, insightful, interactive, and impactful. And I hope that you gained some insight, some tips, useful tips. As we wrap up this session, could you place in the chat one thing you learned in this session before we bring everything to a close? So any takeaways, any key things that you learned? So you can just, it can be one word, it could be a sentence. You just place it in the chat and we will feature it here. Right, to read carefully, to carefully read questions before answering. Thank you so much for that. Then we have another one to cover up the MCQ response. Yes, yes, the options, yes. Neighbor, oi. Yes, I like that you're remembering the title of the technique, neighbor, oi. Read and reread again, yes. June said, read all questions thoroughly. Nice. Joseph said, better ways to prepare things. Yes, yes. And Nisha said, look for keywords. Ah, very good. And identify the distractors in some cases. Yes. All right. Thank you everyone for being here with us. Oh, I see we have some more. Cover up the options. Read, reread, and read. Do not stay too long on any question. Heather, thank you so much for that, Heather. Thank you so much. So I'm happy to know that we all learned something, and we look forward to seeing you in our session tomorrow. I'm going to ask Mr. Duku to place, or Mr. Mohammed to place the link in the chat for tomorrow's session once again. For anyone who needs to register for that session, once you register for it, you will get the new link for that particular session tomorrow, and you'll be able to attend. All right. Have a great afternoon, everyone. And we wish you all the best in your exams, in your end of term exams, midterm exams, whatever the assessments are. We wish you good success. All right. Have a great one, everyone. You are most welcome, Heather.